All right, the question today is, what was the toughest part of stopping drinking alcohol for me? And it was definitely 100% making the decision. It just took me such a long time to get around to it and to step across that line and actually do it. People talk about the cravings and the socializing and all that kind of stuff, but at the end of the day, once you understand that it's your choice to do this or not to do this, that the control is always in your hands, and that it always was in your hands, that the responsibility for this was always yours, and it was always yours alone. You can never go back, right? You burn your bridges once you get that into your head. Once you understand that this is all down to you, that what you're doing, the consequences of what you're doing is all down to you. And once you understand that, then the only question is, what are you going to do with that? Some people just go through this conflict and this fight for the rest of their lives. Which direction are you going to take? Stop the flow, do the work, move on. What do you move on to? Right? That is going to dictate what work you do. What do you move on to? What's the end goal that you want down the road? Now, when did I know I needed to stop? I don't know. If I was to try and figure it out and to try and put myself into a position and in that time and say, well, this is when I really knew that I had to make the decision then and there. One of the reasons was because I was hiding for such a long time in moderation. It's all part of coming to that decision, right? I suppose for me, it was an attempt to stop without actually stopping. I look at all those times that I tried to stop, or that I went through that moderation phase. I look at all those times as kind of practice, right, for doing the real thing. When I look back now, right, it's different to, when I was in the moment. When I'm looking back on it, I can see it now as being practice. Seeing what my life was like without alcohol, even when I didn't have a few drinks for a week or 2 weeks or that kind of stuff. Even that wasn't my intention at the time, right? That was definitely the outcome. I got glimpses of the sober me. Now, the longest stint I did was 10 months. I got a DUI. I was stopped. Christmas time, stopped drinking and driving, got my license taken off me, and I did 10 months. And even though I had every intentions of going back and drinking again, that space, that 10 months, gave me some really important insights. And again, it wasn't that I knew them at the time. I didn't see them at the time. I didn't realize that I was learning anything of any significance except don't get into my car and drive again while I was drinking, right? Or after I'd been drinking, right? But I didn't realize I was learning something that I was going to be using later on. So I think is or was all part of that process of getting me where I am today, sitting here talking to you, right? Making these videos. But, in general, living this life without alcohol. But that's what life is about, really, isn't it? It's about that process, right? It's about that process of moving yourself forwards through your life and learning as you're going along. It's easy to see things looking back. Once you think about it, once you understand it, it's easy to think, why didn't I think those things back then? Why wasn't I in that frame of mind? Why didn't I just put two and two together back then? That's easy to do. Not so easy when you're not thinking on that level, right? When you're in the moment and you're in that habit, you're in the midst of that life. When you don't understand yourself, you don't understand what's going on in your life. So all those moderation attempts, they never got me anywhere because I wasn't changing that underlying structure of my thoughts, right? I wasn't changing the underlying structure of the mindsets and where the mindsets were leading me. The mindsets were the things that were controlling everything. I wasn't changing how I was thinking about alcohol. I was only ever trying to change the impact of alcohol on my life while I was trying to keep alcohol in my life, if you get what I mean. So I was trying to change the way that the alcohol impacted on my life without actually getting rid of it. Thinking, well, it's not me, this is not my problem. This is this is the alcohol, and all I have to do is cut down on the alcohol a little bit and I'll be grand. Circular thinking, spiralized it, getting out of control. So the toughest part for me was the decision, because it took so long to make that decision. You know, it was always a choice. I always knew it was a choice, but I didn't want to take that particular choice, right? I didn't want to make that particular decision. I could never make that decision until I'd kind of washed up all the other excuses, all the other choices that were available to me, right? Cut down here, cut down there, give up for a month here, give up for a month there, don't drink so much here, don't drink so much there, all that kind of stuff. They were all options. And, you know, it felt like I had to get rid of those options before I could actually make the decision to get alcohol out of my life. And it was the decision when it did happen. It seemed at the time that it happened overnight. You know, I was watching my son. He was walking up and down this beach looking for this bloody iPod after a night on the town. When we'd been on the beach the night before, we'd been wrestling on the beach, and he was 21 at the time, so just messing around, drunk. He dropped his iPod, didn't realise it, and just watching him with his head in the sand going backwards and forwards. And I thought that was what I had made the decision. But when I'm looking back on it now, all the stuff that I was doing leading up to that was going into different forums. I was looking at websites. I was still in that moderation mindset. But this choice to stop was brewing for a long time, right? I don't mean to be, you know, it is what it is, right? And then once I've made that decision, once I step across that line and I stick into that decision, then that's the time when you have to be principled about it. You have to at least pull in those principles where you're saying to yourself, right, well, this is going to be a sacrifice. This is going to hurt a little bit. It's going to be uncomfortable. There's a lot to be done. You don't realize how much there is to be done, but that's okay, because if you understood how much there is to be done at the time when it has to be done, or before it has to be done when you're stopping drinking alcohol, you wouldn't do it, because you'd realize this. But that's life. It's just the way it is in life. For me, it's simple now, right? I look back, I'm 10 years away from alcohol, stop the flow, do the work, move on, right? I'm well past that move on stage. You know, I've been teaching this stuff for the last decade, as I said. And, you know, for me, the work part, doing that work part and helping people through that work part, the stages that they have to go through, that's completely ingrained into my thinking, completely ingrained into my life. Stopping the flow is the easiest part. But if I go back to the beginning and I think, what was the hardest part for me? It was that decision, because it took me so long to make. And that's the reason why it was so tough, because I was fighting against myself. You're fighting this inner conflict all the time. So anyway, I'll leave it there for today. If you want help to stop the flow of alcohol, if you want to start the journey to unplugging from the alcohol habit, you can take our free course. It's called The Beginner's Guide to Getting and Staying Sober. The link's downstairs in the description. Also, if you want to make a long-term go of this, right? If you want my help to make a long-term, for more substantial help from me, to not only stop the flow of alcohol, but to build a life that you don't want to escape from, you might want to take a look at our full program. It's habitsv2.com. There's quite a few options to choose from, and the link's in the description as well. So listen, take care of yourself, and I'll speak to you again soon. Onwards and upwards, eh? Bye now.